The apartment door slammed shut behind me with a resounding clang that seemed to reverberate through the oppressive silence. It was well past 11. The city outside a muted symphony of distant sirens, the rumble of garbage trucks, and the occasional lonely car horn. The air inside was thick and stagnant, heavy with the scent of stale cigarette smoke, forgotten takeout containers, and a cloying sweetness that I couldn't quite place. It was almost sickly. My head throbbed in time with the bass thumping from a passing car, each pulse a jarring reminder of the tequila shots that had seemed like such a good idea just an hour ago. Even as I stumbled towards the couch, I felt a prickle on the back of my neck, the unsettling sensation of being watched. I glanced over my shoulder, but the room was shrouded in shadows, the furniture looming like grotesque beasts in the dim light. The worn fabric of the couch offered a grim parody of comfort as I sank into it, the springs groaning beneath my weight. Fumbling in my pocket, I pulled out the crumpled bag of joints, the familiar ritual, a momentary reprieve from the anxieties gnawing at my soul. The cherry glowed an angry red in the darkness as I sparked it up, the acrid smoke swirling around me like a malevolent spirit, momentarily obscuring the unsettling feeling of eyes upon me. YouTube beckoned from my laptop screen, the flickering light casting grotesque shadows on the walls, transforming the familiar space into a distorted reflection of my own unease. As I clicked on a random video, a luxury cruise ship gliding through turquoise waters, a movement in the corner of my eye made me jump. Nothing. Just the shadows playing tricks, I told myself. But the hair on my arms remained stubbornly on end. The front door creaked open, the sound cutting through the haze of smoke and wariness like a knife. My roommate slipped in, a specter against the dim light of the hallway. He moved with an almost unnatural stillness, his usual quietness amplified by the late hour, his presence a discordant note in the symphony of the night. He hung his jacket in the closet, the rustle of fabric against fabric unnaturally loud in the oppressive silence. He was a man of few words, a creature of habit, and this nocturnal arrival was out of character, a subtle disruption in the familiar rhythm of our shared existence. But something else was off. As he passed me, I caught a glimpse of his face in the flickering light of the laptop screen. His eyes were wrong. Empty. Like black pools reflecting a void. I quickly looked away, attributing it to the weed and the tequila, but a shiver ran down my spine. A few minutes later, the hiss of the shower echoed from his room, a mundane sound that somehow felt ominous in the quiet apartment. It was a sound I had heard countless times before, a sound that usually faded into the background noise of our lives. But tonight, it was different. It was a persistent, insistent sound, a constant reminder of something I couldn't quite put my finger on. I tried to ignore it, focusing on the video, but the unsettling feeling persisted. A floorboard creaked in the hallway, followed by a soft thud, as if something heavy had been dropped. I glanced towards the sound but saw nothing. Just shadows. Always the shadows. The apartment, usually a haven of comfortable familiarity, now felt alien and hostile. The air seemed thicker, heavier, pressing down on me like a suffocating blanket. The flickering lights cast an eerie glow on the dust motes dancing in the air, turning them into swirling specters. Even the familiar scent of old takeout containers and stale cigarette smoke seemed to have taken on a sinister edge. Then, I woke. The apartment was suffocatingly dark, the only light coming from the faint glow of the streetlights filtering through the blinds, casting long, distorted shadows that danced across the walls like macabre puppets. My mouth felt like sandpaper. My head pounded like a drum, each beat a painful reminder of the night's excesses. Glancing at my phone, I saw the numbers 3:30 a.m. staring back at me, accusingly. A gnawing hunger pulled me from the couch, my stomach a churning mix of alcohol and regret. As I stumbled towards the kitchen, the persistent hiss of the shower cut through the silence, a jarring reminder of something amiss. It was then that the full weight of the situation crashed down on me. My roommate, the shower, the time. He couldn't still be in the shower. Could he? A wave of nausea washed over me. Had he slipped? Fallen? The images that flashed through my mind were grotesque, fueled by the lingering effects of the alcohol and the oppressive atmosphere of the apartment. Panic clawed at my throat as I raced towards his room, the floorboards groaning beneath my feet like the cries of a dying animal. The bathroom door was locked. I pounded on it, my voice hoarse with fear, the sound echoing in the suffocating silence. "Hey man, you all right?" Silence. A deafening, chilling silence that seemed to amplify the pounding of my heart. My mind raced, thoughts colliding in a chaotic mess. Should I kick the door down? Call 911? Just as I reached for my phone, a notification blinked on the screen, a tiny beacon of light in the overwhelming darkness. A text from my roommate. "Hey man, I couldn't sleep, so I went over to my girlfriend's place. Not sure when I'll be back." Girlfriend? He didn't have a girlfriend. And he certainly never texted me, especially not about his personal life. A cold dread settled over me, a creeping sense of wrongness that seeped into my bones like a poison. I tried calling him, the phone ringing unanswered, each ring echoing the growing panic in my chest. His keys and wallet were still on his desk, his laptop lay open, a half-finished email glowing on the screen like a ghost. It was as if he had vanished into thin air, leaving behind only the remnants of his existence, a haunting reminder of his absence. The shower continued its relentless drone, a mocking reminder of the impossible. I fled back to the living room, the harsh fluorescent lights offering no comfort in the face of the growing dread. Pacing back and forth, I tried to make sense of the situation, my mind rebelling against the absurdity of it all. Then, a faint buzzing from the kitchen counter caught my attention. It was his phone, vibrating with an incoming call. I stared at it, my blood turning to ice. This was beyond wrong. This was unnatural. Grabbing my keys, I bolted out of the apartment, the hallway stretching before me like a tunnel into the unknown. The elevator seemed to take an eternity, each clang of the machinery echoing the pounding in my chest, the flickering lights casting eerie shadows that danced and writhed like tormented souls. I burst out into the lobby, the cool night air hitting me like a slap, a stark contrast to the stifling atmosphere of the apartment. Even that wasn't far enough. I needed to get away, to escape the suffocating feeling that was closing in on me. The street outside was deserted, the only sound the distant hum of traffic and the occasional screech of tires. The buildings loomed over me, their dark windows like vacant eyes, watching my every move. The air was thick with the smell of exhaust fumes and something else, something faintly metallic and rotten. I hurried across the street, my footsteps echoing on the empty sidewalk, the feeling of being watched intensifying with every step. Across the street, the golden arches of McDonald's beckoned, a beacon of normalcy in a world gone mad. I stumbled inside, the familiar smell of fries and coffee offering a fleeting sense of comfort. But even here, surrounded by the chatter of late-night diners and the clatter of trays, I couldn't shake the feeling of dread that clung to me like a shroud. My gaze drifted towards the apartment building, drawn to the balcony outside my unit like a moth to a flame. And there it was, a figure, tall and impossibly thin, stood motionless in the shadows, its form barely visible against the dark backdrop of the night. It was too tall to be human, its head nearly brushing the balcony above. But it wasn't just its height that was unsettling. Its limbs were elongated, almost skeletal, and its head was disproportionately small, perched atop its thin neck like a grotesque puppet. And then it moved. It turned its head towards me, slowly, deliberately, as if it knew I was watching. I couldn't see its face, but I could feel its gaze, cold and predatory, boring into me. A primal fear seized me, freezing me in place. My instincts screamed at me to run, to flee, but a deeper, more insidious voice whispered that escape was impossible. This thing, whatever it was, would follow. I retreated back into the McDonald's, the greasy tile floor and flickering fluorescent lights suddenly seeming like a sanctuary. Locking myself in the grimy bathroom, I finally allowed myself to succumb to the panic that had been building within me. My hands trembled as I dialed 911, my voice cracking as I stammered out a story about an intruder. It was the closest I could come to the truth without sounding completely insane. The operator assured me help was on the way. I emerged from the bathroom, taking a seat near the exit, my eyes glued to the street, searching for any sign of the approaching sirens. The flashing red and blue lights of the police cars were a welcome sight, a glimmer of hope in the encroaching darkness. As the officers approached, I pointed towards the balcony, my voice trembling, the words catching in my throat. It was empty. The sliding door to the living room stood ajar, a silent invitation to the unknown. The questions came rapid fire, each one a hammer blow to my already fragile composure. Is the intruder armed? Do you know who it might be? What are their intentions? I had no answers. All I could offer was my fear, my gut-wrenching certainty that something was terribly, terribly wrong. Finally, sensing the genuine terror in my voice, they relented. 2 officers, guns drawn, cautiously entered the building, their footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. I waited outside, the minutes stretching into an eternity, each tick of the clock a hammer blow to my sanity. A single, muffled gunshot echoed through the night, followed by an unnerving silence that stretched on, punctuated only by the distant wail of sirens and the murmur of confused voices. More police cars arrived, their sirens wailing, breaking the tense quiet. The building was evacuated. Tenants herded out into the street, their faces etched with confusion and fear, their voices mingling in a cacophony of questions and anxieties. More gunshots, screams, and then chaos. The memories blur, fragmented images of flashing lights and shouting voices, a nightmare unfolding before my eyes. I found myself in the back of a police car, the world a dizzying whirl of motion and sound. At the station, I was ushered into a sterile interrogation room, the harsh fluorescent lights reflecting off the cold metallic surfaces, creating an atmosphere of clinical detachment. 2 men in suits awaited me, their faces devoid of emotion, their eyes cold and calculating, their presence radiating an aura of power and secrecy. The questions they asked were bizarre, unsettling, probing into the darkest corners of my mind, dredging up long-buried fears and anxieties. What company was your roommate employed by? What was the nature of his job? How many different people have been inside your apartment since your roommate moved in? Have you ever heard voices inside the apartment from the hours of midnight to 3 a.m.? Voices that did not belong to your roommate? Have you ever seen a circle of people standing outside of the apartment from the hours of midnight to 3 a.m.? People that were exceptionally tall? And then the question that chilled me to the bone. Have you ever seen somebody standing at the foot of your bed upon waking up between the hours of midnight to 3 a.m., only for them to disappear moments later? If so, do you remember what they looked like? Any distinct features? The questions dredged up long-buried memories, strange occurrences that I had dismissed as sleep-deprived hallucinations. The whispers in the night emanating from my roommate's room, the voices soft and indistinct, yet filled with a chilling malice. The fleeting glimpse of a tall figure in the bathroom, vanishing when the lights flicked on, leaving behind only a lingering sense of dread. Had I been living with this thing all along? The men in suits scribbled notes on their phones, their faces impassive, their silence more unnerving than any words they could have spoken. They offered no explanations, no comfort. Just a curt, "We'll be in touch," before disappearing into the night, leaving me alone with my fear and confusion, the weight of their questions pressing down on me like a physical burden. A police officer informed me that I couldn't return to the apartment. They would put me up in a hotel, he said, until they got the situation under control. I asked what had happened, what they had found. He just shook his head, his eyes filled with a mixture of pity and fear, his silence speaking volumes. I don't know, he admitted. I really don't know. The hotel room was sterile, impersonal, the bland furnishings and generic artwork offering no comfort. Sleep was impossible. Every creak of the building, every hum of the air conditioner sent shivers down my spine. My mind conjuring up images of the tall, shadowy figure with the elongated limbs and tiny head lurking in the corners of the room. The internet offered no answers, only news reports of a fire at my apartment building, a convenient lie to cover up the truth, a truth that was too terrifying to comprehend. Exhaustion finally claimed me, pulling me into a restless slumber, my dreams filled with distorted images and unsettling sounds. I woke with a start, my heart pounding, my body bathed in a cold sweat. The clock on the nightstand glowed 1 a.m., and from the bathroom a soft, steady hiss filled the silence, a sound that sent a wave of terror washing over me. The shower. It was running,